welcome back to another New World video. Today I'm going to mention as many early game New World Aeternum tips, tricks and important info that will help you out if you are either a brand new player starting out on October the 15th or someone who is a returning player and had like a big layoff. I'm also going to be releasing a mid-game tips, tricks and info video along with an end-game version also. So if you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the like button and let me know in the comment section down below, along with any other early game tips that you can think of that I may not have included in this video. I've also got 3,800 hours played in New World so far since the launch back in 2021, and I'll be firing up a fresh start character and playing through that over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/LiamH. If you'd like to head over there and drop a follow, we can discuss even more tips and tricks when we fire that up on October the 15th. Tip number 1 is equip loads. Keeping an eye on them and then understanding all the buffs and bonuses depending on if you're in light, medium or heavy. So in New World there are those 3 different weight classes. If you are 12.9 in weight or below, you're in light. If you're 13 to 22.9, you're in medium, and then if you're 23 weight or above, you fall into the heavy category. Each one of these have the different buffs, which I'll show on screen now. For example, one quick example, if you're in light equip load, you get a better dodge roll compared to say in heavy, where it's just more of like a switch to the side. And you also get other bonuses, like in light you get like a plus 15% to damage as a quick example. Now this weight is based off all of your armor and the shield. So for example, if you're not using say sword and shield, or even say flail and shield, if you just don't have a shield in your build plans, don't equip one because that will add to your weight and then just sort of like waste your weight. Also, you only get the bonuses from the attributes from the shield if you've got that equipped. So basically what I'm trying to say is, as you're playing through New World, keep an eye on this equip load. This will probably show you why your dodges change and your attack damage change and your healing rating changes and stuff like that. And you can check this by just hitting tab and looking at all your armor on the left hand side. Tip number 2, the fastest way to level up in New World Aeternum will be following the main story quest and then doing some of the surrounding side story quests. If you hit the J key, if you're playing on PC, this will show you your quest log. Take a look at these. Make sure you're following the main story quest. This has been completely revamped from compared to when the game first launched in 2021. A much smoother experience. That's actually a way better experience. You'll just enjoy the game a lot more. The story's better, the cinematics are better, all that kind of stuff. But quickest way to level in the game is definitely by following that main story quest. Tip number 3, there is a free all the way up to level 100 season pass in New World. This normally resets every 3 months. There's 100 levels with 100 different rewards, and these are completely free. I'll give you a quick example of the current one that's in the game at the moment. Now I'll show you here. I've not actually bought the paid side, so it's a free side and a paid side. You can do all 100 of the free side and collect all of the rewards. If at any time you decide to then buy the premium side of the battle pass or the season pass, you will then just auto unlock all of the levels that you've already got to. So if you're level 80 on the free side, for example, and then you decide to buy it at that moment, you'll get all 80 level rewards from the premium at the same time. Tip number 4, we've got daily free gold and materials. So every time you log into the game each day, there'll be 3 different reward bags that you can get. Now the only thing that I can't tell you now is exactly how to get them, because it changes every couple of months in game. Sometimes it could be from chopping trees, from mining nodes, from skinning animals, or from killing mobs, or even opening chests. You get these extra bags of bundles. I'll open one on screen for you here, and as you can see, you get a couple of free materials and you get free gold. It's not a ton of gold, but the tip here would be just make sure when the game releases on October the 15th and we know where to get these resource bags from, if it's skinning for example, wherever it may be, make sure you collect them every day. It's some free gold and some free bonus materials. Tip number 5, the area used to be known as First Light has now been replaced and is now called Elysian Wilds. It's no longer a low-level zone like it used to be back when the game first came out. It's now a level 60 to 65 zone. So if you're reminiscing, maybe you're coming back to the game, don't head over in that direction thinking, First Light, I remember this place. It's completely changed. You'll get killed if you go there early game. All the mobs are too high, but First Light has now changed. Number 6 is territory buffs. So every time that you quest or you craft or anything like that, you earn like area or territory experience. If you open up your map in the top left hand side, I'll show you where this is located. And basically every time you hit a level, you get 3 different choices. These choices are slightly different each time you level up, and then they mix and match as they go back around. And there's like a little tips and trick here, if you like, on what to pick and what not to pick. So the one you definitely don't want to pick is character XP. This is an absolute waste. What that basically means if you do pick it is every time that you're in that zone and you're you know, doing quests or killing mobs, whatever, you do get a small bonus to your character XP. But yeah, once you get to level 65, that means it's completely pointless. That's a bit of a waste. Storage is definitely one that you want to pick. This will increase your storage capacity in that town, in that main area. This is always a good choice. You can obviously do that with chests in your houses as well, but this is definitely a good choice. Now, one that's a bit 50-50 is the territory standing XP buff. So basically the levels go all the way up to 300. If you really want to hit 300, and that's like one of your achievements, it's actually pretty hard to do. There's a lot of work involved. Maybe you can pick a few of these. This will help you get to 300 a little bit quicker. If you're not too fussed and you just want general buffs, don't be getting the territory XP buff. Now, here's my tip though. You need to pick a different town where you're always going to try and do all of your crafting. And then you want to pick a different town where you're always going to be trading. So on the trading post, selling and buying items. Because two of the buffs that you can pick is to reduce the taxes that you pay when you actually craft in that area or when you use the trading post in that area. This might not seem like a lot, but it actually is. If you're one of those players who's wanting to buy and sell on the trading post an absolute ton, you can save yourself a lot of money overall and sort of bring down those margins. So always buff that up in one specific town, and then in another town, craft the one, and then when you do all your crafting, you'll just save a bunch of money. Tip number 7 is weapon combinations and then the attributes. I'll show you some examples up here on screen. So when you open up the attribute page, you'll see some symbols of the weapons. Now, any that are fully sort of glowing, that means that when you put an attribute point into that slot, let's say for sword and shield right at the top there, you've got strength. Every time that you put 1 point into strength, that will boost the power and the damage that you do with that weapon. Now, taking sword and shield as the example again, it's sort of like grayed out a little bit on the dexterity. Now, that means that if you put some points into dexterity, the sword and shield will also get more powerful, but not quite as much from attribute to attribute compared to strength. Well, let's look at focus, for example. There's no sword and shield there whatsoever. So if we put a point into focus, our sword and shield does not get any stronger. Constitution is just basically health buffs, and then obviously you can see some of the tiered buffs there if you hit 50s and 150s and stuff like that. So what you want to do here is when you're picking two weapons early game, if you want to try and maximize the amount of damage that you're doing, then this is what you need to follow. You need to pick two weapons that match the same attributes. So a good example not to pick would be sword and shield and life staff, because for that, if you want to maximize the power or damage of your sword and shield, you need to be putting points into strength and then dexterity. But if you want to maximize the amount of damage or healing that the life staff does, you need to put points into focus. Therefore, you're splitting your attributes between 3 different pools. You won't get the most effectiveness. The best effectiveness, for example, with, say, a sword and shield would be a spear. The spear also mainly gets increased power from dexterity, and then it also gets a little bit of extra power from strength. So they'd be like a good combination. So when you're picking two weapons, just check out the attributes. Make sure that you're trying to pick two weapons at the same time. You can always mix and match these. You can switch to mage later on. And that, so for example, fire staff and then ice gauntlet. And then that means that you just put all your points into intelligence, a little bit into constitution for your health, and then the intelligence would power up the fire staff and the ice gauntlet. Tip number 8, at level 20 is when you can get your first mount in the game. This has been reduced down from level 25 it was previously. You want to head over to the Everfall town, and then if you look into the north, you've got the Shadow Mine Shrine. You can fast travel there or just head there if you've never been there for the first time, and then just north of that, I'll show it on screen here, is where the first quest will be to pick up your horse mount. You basically follow the first quest, then it gives you the horse, and then from there on, you've got your first mount in the game. Tip number 9, if you've not got your mount yet, just running on the designated roads, you should be able to see that will give you a 15% faster movement speed buff. Stick into the center of those roads, you run a lot faster than what you do out in the sticks, out in the wild. Tip number 10, if you obviously do need to go on the terrain and off the roads, you can also almost permanently boost your speed as well. If you were to equip a bow, whether it's your main hand or secondary, just for running off roads, I'll show you the perk here on screen that you need to work towards. Once you select that perk, keep a bow on you, and as you're running, I'll give you a quick example here. As you unsheathe the bow, that activates a 5-second 10% speed boost, and then there's a 5-second cooldown, so you basically just keep unequipping or keep toggling between your main hand weapon and your bow, and that'll constantly give you a mini speed buff when you're off-road. Tip number 11 is to pick the same faction as the people that you want to play the game with or join in a company. So, for example, once you get to around about level 18-ish in the Everfall region, you'll be able to pick between the 3 different factions in the game. Now, what you could actually do if you wanted some bonus XP is you could do all 3 quest lines, and then when it gets to the final part of the final quest in each line, where it will say, basically, click here to now join the Syndicate, for example, you just don't do that part and you cancel the quest. Then you can move over and you can do the Covenant one. and the Marauder one, and you can actually gain yourself some boost XP. And then once you finally pick which faction you want to join, then you just complete that final quest, and then you'll be a syndicate, for example. Now, one thing to mention is you can join companies without joining a faction, so you could be factionless and join syndicate, for example. But if you want to participate in wars and stuff like that, you need to then join a faction. So what I would do is, once around about level 18, if you're looking for that bonus XP, do all 3 of the different quest lines, and then basically liaise with your friends, or, you know, join a couple different companies if you don't know anyone in the game. Once you find a bunch of cool people to play with or whatever, just then join in that faction. One thing to notice is there is a slight cooldown of a couple of months in between switching factions, which is a bit rough. So the tip here is don't make that decision too lightly. Tip number 12, once you make your faction choice, you've then got faction rewards. Another little tip here would be the first 3 faction quests that you choose to do every single day get a bonus to XP and gold. So make sure that you can work your way through the better faction rewards that way. Now, you can do as many faction quests as you want every day, but those first 3 will give you the bonus. Tip number 13, you'll see these blue, almost flashing pieces of lore notes around the maps all over Aeternum. Make sure you pick them up as you're going through the game. Now, you do get a mini XP boost every time you pick them up, and if you're like a lore nerd, you can decide to read them and learn even more about the game as well if you like. Tip number 14, there is an unstuck feature in the game. I'll show you how to do it on screen now, or you can just go into the text channels and just type /unstuck. Now, what this will do is it'll obviously, if you get physically stuck in like crazy little areas in the map, it'll pull you out and it'll put you where you were just a couple of seconds ago. So if you ever do get stuck, the tip is don't stay in that location for a couple of minutes and then do unstuck. Try and do unstuck straight away. Also, you can use this in dungeons as well. If for whatever reason you want to go back to the very start of a dungeon, even if you're midway through or near the end, if you do unstuck, it'll take you to the front door. Tip number 15, PVE damage types. Now, when you hit PVE mobs, you'll see 3 different colors in the text. You'll see white, yellow, and orange. White just means that you're doing standard damage. Yellow means that you're doing increased damage. And then orange is when you are critting or hitting the mobs in the back. Now, to explain this a little bit better, I'll put a table up on the screen now, and you can see all the different weapon types that you can use, which then have damage types associated to them. And then you can also see the weaknesses of the PvE mobs as well. So basically, the tip here is if you want to do a little bit more damage, make sure you're using the correct types of weapons with the correct type of weapon damage against those mobs. Tip number 16, NewWorld does now have filtering options all around the game. So you can filter your gear in your storage. You can use this open bracket method here. If you're searching for just a particular type of perk, for example, maybe you store the bow, which has, you know, penetrating shot on there, for example, and you want to go and find it, and you've got a storage with 50 bows in there. Right at the top, you can just open brackets and start typing in that perk. Close the bracket, and that'll help you search it. When you come to the trading post, you can also do the same, but it's a lot easier. You don't have to type this out. You can just go into the filters, and you can apply 2 types of filters. One which says just include this perk, or there's another option where it says only show me items if this specific perk is definitely in there, so you can filter out your gear a lot more easier. And then obviously you can do this in your inventory as well. If you've got a ton of items, especially after dungeons in NewWorld, you get so many like sort of multiple items being put in there. If you want to search through them for any good ones that you're looking for, you can search the perks right at the top. Tip number 17, if you get into a little bit of crafting, there is a first time crafting bonus. Again, I'll show you this on screen here. If you look down your crafting menus, there'll be a little symbol there. That's to show you that you've never crafted this item before. And then you can go in there, and when you craft that item, just craft one of them, and then move on to the next one, and then move on to the next one. You will get a crafting XP bonus. This is another little trick that you can get in there to level up your crafting a little bit quicker. Tip number 18, don't focus too much on gear until you get towards the max level. So basically the rule is here, every time that you pick up a new piece of gear, hover over it. If there's some nice green arrows on there showing you that it's basically a better gear score, or it's got more armor, it's got more attributes on there, for example, just equip it. Don't worry too much. The only little bit of thing I would say to try and help you out a tiny bit here is, obviously, if it is a higher gear score, equip it. And then if it's a higher gear score, and it also has the attributes of the 2 weapons that you're currently got equipped. So let's say you're doing Fire Staff and say Ice Gauntlet, for example. You want to be equipping gear that either has some Constitution on there, just in general for your health, or things like Intelligence. That's very, very important. Equip those. The only thing I would say is don't worry about it too much, because come end game, it's all going to change. But just keep an eye out on those 2 things, gear score, and then is it the right attributes for what your weapons are currently. Tip number 19, so we mentioned earlier on that there is a battle pass system, if you like, in this game. And then one way you can level up through this is all the different tasks. I'll show these on screen here. One thing you can do, make sure that you strategically use your stamps. So then you get 1 wild stamp per completed line for some bonus XP. try and fill out the whole page if you can before you move on to the next one. The only time I'd say against this is if the tasks that in order to complete the whole sort of box, if you like, is a task in game that you just don't want to do, like complete a dungeon and you just can't be bothered. Once you complete at least one line, you can move on to the next level, and that would work as well. Tip number 20, gear set slots. So these will be over the right hand side on your inventory. I think you can get up to 9 of these now. Some of them you can get for free in ways in game, and some of them you can pay for on the store. Personally, I've got all 9, but that's for things I do at endgame. The tip here is, though, if you're running low on bag space, you can place gear and items in those slots on the right hand side, and it will take the physical weight from your encumbrance. Nice and easy early game thing to do. So if you're struggling with your weight and your loads before you get those golden bags towards the end game, utilize those gear slots on the right hand side. Number 21, always detour to grab shrines. The fast traveling has been massively upgraded in New World. You can dart all around for much cheaper compared to the original launch. What I would say is every time you are doing quests out in the world or just gathering or whatever, make sure if there's a shrine nearby, grab it. Not only will you get a bit of XP to help you level up, you'll also just be able to use that fast travel location later on in game, because normally the game brings out events left, right and center all over the map, and if you've got every single shrine on the map, it just makes it so much quicker for you to get there in the future. And tip number 22, if the faction choice, so let's say you've chose Syndicate, and if a Syndicate company, even if it's not yours, owns a specific town, let's say Everfall, I'll go around and show you a couple of examples here on the game now, but basically there's a couple of different NPCs you can go to, and you can get some free items. You can get like iron and certain types of wood. I'll show the NPCs here on screen for one town example, but yeah, so if you're a member of whatever faction you are, if that faction owns 3 or 4 different maps, make sure you go to those daily and pick up the free materials, especially early game. They can be quite handy and useful. Now, there is probably a few that I've missed, and there's many more that I could include, but I didn't want to make the video too long. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Like I said at the start of the video, I really would appreciate any subs. We've just gone past 4K. If anyone wants to help me get to my new goal, which is 5K, I'd really appreciate that. And you can also check me out on Twitch. But please use the comment section down below to list as many more tips, tricks, and important info for early game that you can possibly think of. And don't forget, I'll be bringing out 2 more videos after this one. We're going to go for mid-game tips and then also end-game tips, tricks, and info. So drop a sub on the channel to make sure that you don't miss out on those. And I'll see you in the next one.